My journey was always to do something entrepreneurial. I always had that bug. When I was done university, it was obvious that this is what I wanted to do. The market was terrible. It was a terrible time to be building, actually, and that's when we did the best at that point. Back in 2018, we were the first builder to build a 2-story house with a basement suite. One of the things that I'm guilty of is I like to overanalyze things, paralysis by analysis, and doing that really impedes growth.
And what advice would you have for other entrepreneurs who are looking up to you in terms of starting to build a business? Gary, thank you very much for coming to the podcast episode. I know we've been trying to schedule this in for a while, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And, I've been actually following your business for a while, and I've seen the growth that Oxford Homes has experienced. So I want to start off by maybe having you describe your journey as far as what is Oxford Homes and a little bit about yourself as well.
Oxford Homes was started in 2010 by my father and I. We really didn't experience any growth until 2018, 2019. That is when I was, in the latter stages of my university, and I got more involved. And since then, it's grown quite well for the last 6-7 years. My journey is I grew up in home building. My dad started building houses in 1997. Again, it was a very small scale until 2018, 2019. But I grew up in it. My dad was a framer by trade, so I was on the job sites on the weekends, and in summer vacations I would help out. So I grew up in construction. I loved it. And then I went into school for accounting, got a business degree, did a master's in accounting. Had a very small and unsuccessful stint at an accounting practice. And but my journey was always to do something entrepreneurial. I always had that bug. And, when I was done university, it was obvious that this is what I wanted to do.
Excellent. So you have a passion for home building. What got you started in this industry?
My dad, he was already in it.
Yes.
So I understood it at a very young age. And I just loved, you buy a piece of land, there's nothing there. You have this, in your head where you want to build, this house. You look at it, it's on paper. You get to shape it, design it. And then you build it, and then for maybe over 100 years, somebody's going to live in there and make memories. So
that's right. So what kind of homes do you build?
So we mostly build houses that are for first-time home buyers, I would say. Prices vary, I would say, between, as low as mid-5s to high 7s, maybe even in the 8s here and there. There are outliers, of course, but we build rental basement suites in every single home. That's standard. I think that's what differentiates us, because anyone doing the number of houses we do, they always have that as an option, an expensive option, whereas we already include it. It's a part of our construction process. So that's our niche, you could say, having the basement suite, and that separated us from our competitors. We also, have a lot of houses that are, our houses have a lot of the features that would normally be upgrades. We just include them: air conditioning, electric fireplace, heated garage, insulated drywalled, ceiling height cabinets, upgraded fixtures, upgraded flooring. All of that is standard in our houses. We're able to do it at a very competitive price. Since we include it in every house, we have some buying power. And we try to not mark that up too much. It's a relatively small percentage of the whole cost. So if we're able to pass that along to our customer at, relatively what it costed us, and we're able to do it with relative ease, we're not, going in after the fact, keeping track of which house has which upgrade. They're all pretty much upgraded to the max. It really gives us a competitive advantage.
Interesting. Speaking about the housing market, your market primarily is in Saskatoon and surrounding areas as well, or mainly in Saskatoon?
Strictly Saskatoon at the moment. We started actually in Warman, just outside of Saskatoon here. Since then, when we came to Saskatoon, we just stuck around. We have looked at expanding back into Warman and Martinsville, and I imagine it will happen in the next 2-3 years. But Saskatoon is where people want to be. The Warman and Martinsville, it's a very small market, very, very small market. You could easily overbuild that market by just dropping 20 houses there in 1 year. So we're a little reluctant. They're smaller markets. We don't want to overbuild and have things that aren't moving. And our buyers, the ones that we have that, they come through referral and so on and so forth, there's no demand for that. It would be a different buyer group altogether. So we're avoiding that at the moment, but we are looking into it, and we will at some point when we're saturated Saskatoon go into that direction.
Interesting. I mean, the Saskatoon housing market has changed drastically in the past decade.
Oh yeah.
And, obviously that has been partly the reason why the growth has fueled in your business. But it was this period in 2018, 2019 where you mentioned that there was essentially an uptake of home builders, or what really happened to the market that
The market
really
was
fueled it?
terrible.
Yeah.
It was a terrible time to be building, actually, and that's when we did the best at that point.
Interesting.
It's kind of crazy, but back in 2018, to my knowledge, we were the first builder to build, especially like track build, a 2-story house with a basement suite, a 2-bedroom basement suite. It didn't exist in that 1,800 square foot range.
Right.
Nobody else at the time had a design where on a relatively small lot, you're building, 1,800 square feet with a 2-bedroom basement suite. We were the first. Which is kind of crazy because back in those days, the larger builders at the time, they didn't even put side entrances in. They had no desire to even put an entrance to the basement so that somebody could potentially build a basement suite, whereas we were building them with basements, and that differentiated us right away. There was nobody else doing that, and that's what the buyers wanted. Houses were a lot more affordable back then, but there was still a lot of demand for rentals. Like, Saskatoon's changed so much since I've been here. And now it's a melting pot. There's a lot of diversity here. There's a lot of immigration. There's a lot of people coming in from overseas. And, oftentimes they come in and they have money from back home. They have high-paying jobs. They're educated. And the first thing they want to do is buy a house. Mm-hmm. They want to buy a home and live the Canadian dream. And, they come in here and they come in with the mindset, like, hey, the basement, we're not using that. Let's rent it out. They're much more inclined to have a rental basement than the typical Canadian that was maybe in Saskatoon 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
For them, it's a non-negotiable. They're like, why wouldn't we, right? This is a great source of income, very little effort, and that's what our buyers wanted, and that's what we gave them. Now things have changed. Pretty much every builder that we compete with, they all at minimum put a side entrance in.
Right.
That I would say in most cases, the side entrance, eventually the homeowner buys it, builds a basement suite themselves for rent. Very little chance, I would say, that they eventually build it to keep for themselves. But the builder essentially always puts a side entrance door at this point so that, they can appeal to both bases.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, competitors are definitely catching up, and the housing market. I mean, it's a great community right now in Saskatoon, and I see no end in terms of Saskatoon's growth. But how has the market shifted over the past few years? I know that there's been some restrictions,
it's been a little crazy. There's more government incentives out there than any time that I can recall. We have this basement rebate, which has really benefited our business because we build basement suites in every single house. The Saskatchewan government came out with a secondary suite incentive, and it allows homeowners to get up to $35,000 towards, as a credit, towards getting a basement suite to incentivize people to build rentals to help deal with the housing shortage. We've been building basement suites anyway, so then our demand went up because we were already in that spot. And then now they recently came up with first-time home buyer rebate.
The 5%,
5%, they get the GST back up to, start at $1 million, you get the full amount, and then, grinds down at 1.5. But that's $1 million is more than enough in Saskatoon. Basically, everybody gets the GST back. And in our case, I would say over 80% perhaps are first-time home buyers. So they're really benefiting from that. Those two things really helped, fuel the growth. And I think that's what drove prices up is these incentives. And then also got exacerbated when, the pandemic happened, things came to a halt. And then after that, immigration went, the highest amount of immigration in recent memories.
That's right.
So there's a lot more, people living in the country and they needed a place to stay. And then the shortage, the supply chain debacle that came from the pandemic, all that, went into the storm that drove prices up to where they are at today. But the demand is still there. I'm a little worried that immigration has slowed down, and what's going to happen in the future, I predict that it's going to start to slow down eventually because if we're not getting more people moving into the country, then the people that are here, they're eventually going to have bought a home already. And then who's going to buy next? Right? We need to have more immigration.
Right, yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some restrictions that have been made from an immigration perspective. So we'll see how that pans out in terms of the Saskatoon
And we
market.
need it. We need skilled labor.
Yes.
It's very hard in our industry to find good employees.
As with any business, it's always challenging to find the right team. So let's maybe shift our gears towards how you've kind of grown and put the business together here. You mentioned over the years that, obviously, as with any business, there are growing pains, right? Having the right team in place, having a right system in place to be able to make sure your customers are happy and they're getting what they need. How have you dealt with some of those challenges in your business?
Well, we've dealt with those challenges a lot,
Yes.
maybe more than anybody, at least I know.
Right.
I would say first and foremost, like I have an accounting background. Prior to my, full-time involvement, we were really mismanaged on the back end of, accounting and, paying your taxes on time, keeping track of expenses and revenues and all that. So we had a pretty awful experience dealing with a CRA audit. But I think, looking back at it, it was probably a good thing because, you learn what you shouldn't be doing. You should hire the best accountants and best lawyers. That's first and foremost. When people come to me and they ask, oh, who's a good accountant or who's a good lawyer? And then the next follow-up question is, how much are they charging? We want the cheapest. And you tell them, this is what I'm paying. And they're like, oh, well, this other guy who's non-accredited, doesn't have a proper designation, doesn't have the relevant experience, is charging maybe a fraction of that. And you're like, well, this could end up costing you a lot more than the fees you're saving. You should always have a professional. So on that end, we were actually very good. In the last 7-8 years, we've always paid our taxes on time. Our accounting's always up to date. That part of it has been really, really good. The construction side's been a little different. First off, it's very difficult. You hire employees in this on the sites that are working for you. They pick up trades, they understand, and then they want to pick up jobs on the side, right? Well, somebody bought a house and it didn't have a finished basement, and, somebody that was working for you is now wanting to pick up basements on the side and build them, and so on and so forth. So that becomes an issue. So you gotta make sure that, whoever you hire, you're very clear that this is your job and we're not allowing you to do other jobs.
Right.
Secondly, you got to understand the business. The back end is one part of it. The front end's a different. You have to have the technical construction knowledge as well. That if there's ever a situation, you have to understand it. If you understand all the intricacies of construction, I'm still learning very much, but I would say I'm fairly competent on the sites. I know the technical things now, and that's very important because if you're hiring somebody, how do you know what they know if you don't know it yourself?
Right.
Right. You don't know the right questions to ask. Getting good site guys has been challenging, I would say, in the last little bit because it's been so busy. Everyone's trying to hire. Everyone's trying to build. There's new builders coming up, every day it seems like. There's somebody new that started a construction company. I think it's a good thing when things slow down. It's an opportunity for businesses to reset. You can hire, recruit. When, weak businesses are going out, that's when the strong, go out and eat. That's when you hire the best talent, you recruit them when, that's when you re-strategize, you get ahead of the ball, right? So there's opportunity there when things do slow down. But when things are busy, it's very hard to recruit good talent. And I think, what is a business? It's a team, right? And that's really the great value is if you have a strong team behind you. That being said, my, strongest asset has been my dad. He's very much on the sites. I handle the office end of things. He handles the site end of things. And he's worked very, very hard, and he continues to. But the both of us complement each other very well, and it's been a good ride.
I've had a chance to meet your dad. I think we were shopping in the mall one day, and
really?
and had a chance to meet with him, and a great personality, and obviously. As sons, we have to, obviously look up to our dads, and it really instills the level of confidence in business as well. So that's very important.
But my dad, honest to God, I've never met an individual who has more construction knowledge than him. And I've met a lot of construction people.
Right.
He has knowledge about everything in construction. If there's ever a situation that we're puzzled, We go to him and he always has the answer. So that's a huge, huge asset. But he didn't come from, an education. He didn't have a background in an education. He has a very strong construction ethic. He has a very good, strong construction knowledge. But I think me with, the education and the back end and the ability to understand finance and grow from there, I think the two of us complemented each other really well, and that's what enabled us to grow.
How long has he been in the construction business?
Early 90s, 30 plus years, yeah.
In Canada or?
In Canada. And he's been doing his own thing. He was a framer by trade for, I would say, nearly over 30 years now. He's been in his own. He's never had a job that he worked for somebody else in the past 30 plus years.
Right. Definitely an inspiration for you to follow, and that's great. So when it comes to building the right kind of team in your business, what are maybe some of the things that you've actually done to help recruit for the right kind of individual?
If you have a company that's growing, that's already a plus, because people want to go work for a company that's growing. And if you have an environment where you treat everyone with respect and you lead by example, you're working hard, you come to the sites. I know some owners that I've never seen on site. I make it a point to go to site, say hello to everybody, visit them. They know that I'm there and I'm no better than them. You want to really have a business that they feel and they know has a purpose, and it's going to be the next big thing. Nobody really wants to go for a business that's plateaued. They want to be in a business. So, for example, if you're building more houses each year and you're building bigger projects, that's very attractive to good hires. And you really need to have a bigger business, generally speaking, to hire people. There's different roles and positions, but you can't really fill those positions without having the volume, because to afford it, you need to have the volume.
That's right, yeah. And it's also tough to keep that team in place as well once they've been hired, right? So it's always a challenge to continue having the right people and keep them on your
very much
in your business.
The hard thing about hiring and retaining is oftentimes you hire somebody and they're not a good fit.
Right.
And what I learned the hard way is, like, if you know they're not working out, fire fast.
Yeah.
Hire quickly and fire fast. When we know that this person's not working out and you just don't want to have that awkward conversation, you're doing them a disservice and you're doing yourself a disservice. Be honest, tell them, hey, this isn't a good fit for us, and please, all the best to you, but this is not going to last for us. And then also, if you hire somebody, if you feel that you found somebody who's a rock star and you don't know how quite to fit them into the organization, hire quickly. Just hire them. Figure out the rest afterwards. Figure out how to fit them in. And the other thing is, in our business, it takes a long time to train somebody. Every company is different. Everybody has a different process. We deal with different trades than another guy. A new hire is going to take probably 2-3 months at least, just to get their head wrapped around where all the sites are at, who we work with, what our systems are, the processes, who does what. And then, especially if you have somebody that you know is not working out, you're spending all that time training them.
Of course.
For what, right? So you want to hire, you want to make sure you get the right hire, and then you nurture them. Or if they ever need anything, you're there. You trust them. That's a big thing. You can't have that as an issue. A lot of guys will be like, where did you go? Where were you? What are you doing? As long as you see the guys on site, they're there, right? You don't want to look over your shoulder every time. You want to hire people with integrity.
That's true. It's one of those things that I also find very difficult in my business as well. Is firing somebody is one of the most challenging aspects in my business. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's necessary at times.
I think so. You have to get comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
You can't lose sleep over it. You need to be able to fire somebody, and it's honestly good for both sides.
Exactly.
Because if you know they're not a good fit, they're giving you more time, and they know it's a dead end, or at least they're not getting promoted. They maybe have higher aspirations. And oftentimes when you're firing somebody, they actually have an idea, right? They understand that, hey, maybe this isn't, right? Because it's not for everybody. I would say it's a very stressful job.
Right.
And it's more of it could be a 24/7 job, right? Sometimes things happen outside of, regular hours, and then you need to be available.
Yeah. So speaking about the growth that Oxford Homes has experienced over the years, obviously 2018, 2019, you've kind of leveraged, your team and your business and worked on some interesting projects. How many homes did you build last year?
I would say right around 40.
Around 40 homes, yes.
Yeah, but the thing about us that separates us from our competitors is we build basements in every single one.
That's right.
And our houses are generally, even after you factor the basement out, are a little bit more pricey than our competitors just because we have all these upgrades and generally they're bigger houses typically. So our 40 might be our competitors. Like our house is doing 40 might, draw in revenue similar to a guy doing 60.
Right. Yeah.
But our 40, I would say, is equivalent to 80 in terms of effort because basement's a lot of effort too. But since we do it at the same time, we do have efficiencies. It doesn't slow us down as much as, let's say, if somebody wanted to add the basement after the house is built. But yeah, that's our growth right now, and we're happy with that number. I would rather do 40 houses really, really well than do 60 and have a bad reputation and not pay people on time and not deliver in a timely fashion and be able to service. So we want to grow at a very reasonable rate. We don't want to grow too fast. We want to be able to service our customers.
Yeah, it's a really interesting balance you have to play when you're trying to manage growth. You don't want to be growing too fast because that will restrict resources and cash flow and so forth.
When you lose some money, I think it's Warren Buffett's quote, you lose some money, it's fine. You lose reputation, that's not going to be tolerated, right?
Exactly.
In the long run, reputation is what will take you to where you want to go.
That's right. So it seems to me that the unique value proposition that most customers are getting when they come to you is really the tremendous value that they're getting from the home. Because of the basement and the upgrades.
I think one of the biggest advantages we have is we are relentless in our design phase.
Right.
Relentless. I think about our design, I would say, like, in bed I'm thinking about design, at lunch I'm thinking about design. Whatever we're working on at that moment, I want to make sure it's designed to the best of our abilities. We don't rush design. I feel like a lot of builders, they just, slap together a house, as long as it has 3 bedrooms and a bonus room, whatever. There's a lot of improvements they can make, but they're not even thinking about it, so they don't even know. And their concern is just getting the job off the ground.
Right.
We take it really, really slow during the design phase. And then once the design is done, then we take it really fast. But I would say, in most cases, if you ask our customers, the realtors, just general consensus, they would say our design is better than our competitors. Even in the basement suite, we're doing 2-bedroom basement suites. A lot of guys are doing 2-bedroom basement suites, but our 2 bedrooms for that size of a home are the best designed 2-bedroom basement suites, or 1-bedroom, or whichever category we're in. We're the best design because we have to design, especially when you're doing a basement and we're building them, so people see it. When you're doing a basement, the main floor dictates the design of the basement. Exactly. That's the footprint, right? So when you're designing a house, you're not just designing to optimize on the main floor. You have to keep the basement in mind too.
Right.
And then the basement and the main floor ultimately form the second floor. But you have to design those 3 at the same time and take into consideration all 3 floors before you do anything. So we like to really slow down and think about everything as it relates to the basement design, the main floor, and the second floor.
So that attention to detail is really important.
Yes,
when
it's very important to me, I would say. More than anybody I know.
That's right.
But it's fun. I really enjoy designing. I love the design phase.
So Gary, what do the next 5 years look like for your company as far as growth is concerned?
We have big plans, but it's a lot going to depend on the economy and the demand. But I really see the future being a renter's market. I see there's going to be a huge growth. I think the next generation, my generation, they're going to be a renter nation. Affordability is very, very high, and Canadians are saving record low amounts. I would say, young people these days, they're not savers. They like to spend, and they like having flexibility, and they don't like being tied down. It's going to be a renter nation. I think there's going to be a big shift. So we're really pivoting towards also, appealing to the renter market. So we have we're working on the plans to get some rental projects started.
Nice.
And then also we last year bought a hotel, and we're looking at other hotels. So we want to grow in the hospitality. We want to grow into the rental market, and we're also going to be building a commercial building for retail and office, in which we're going to be building our future head office. So we're trying to diversify. Single-family home building will always be there. We're never going to leave that segment. That's your base.
Right.
So in terms of that, we want to be able to maintain and grow at a very reasonable organic rate. We don't want to build too many that we can't manage, but we don't want to, reduce in that capacity either. We'd rather do what we can, but do it well. But we do want to diversify. Diversification is very, very important, and I realized that in 2008.
Right.
My dad had built at that time, which seemed like a lot, probably half a dozen houses. And then the market stalled, and we were in Medicine Hat, and that was, I think, the hardest hit in Alberta, perhaps.
Right.
Because it was an oil and gas town, and things really took a hit, and prices dropped overnight 100K, and took years to sell even. Like, it's one thing taking a hit on the price, but it's another thing just making payments, paying utilities, holding costs for several years while you wait for something to sell. So home building is great. I have a very good feeling that Saskatchewan's going to do well and it's going to fare well. But at the same time, I know it can happen, and we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. Because home building is great when things are selling, but there's no cash flow unless a house sells.
Right.
Whereas if you have other pieces of real estate, you have rental units. The rates might go up or down slightly, but there's always consistent cash flow. You want to make sure you have diversification, so that in any case, if things slow down, you're able to weather the storm.
Interesting. So you're basically trying to diversify so that you can add more stability in the business, and
then the other thing is it's harder to grow single-family housing, I feel, than building apartments or townhouses at scale. You're not worried about selling. You're not worried about what the market's doing as much, because Saskatchewan's vacancy rates are so low right now.
That's right.
And you're building essentially the same unit over and over again. It's in one spot. I feel like it's a really good way for us to grow. I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is it's nice having diversity.
Right.
I think it was Ray Dalio that said if you have, a certain number of uncorrelated revenue streams, you'll be successful in the long term.
Right.
And I mean, it is uncorrelated. It is technically real estate. But if one thing slows down, if, for example, suppose the economy slows down, people aren't buying houses, they still need a place to stay. So, I mean, rents typically fare a lot better than, resale product in a slow economy.
What's that magic number? Is it 7 or 11 or?
I think it was 11 in that one.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, but it stuck with me. Like that makes sense to me, having uncorrelated revenue streams, because I look at it, I'm fairly young, and I would like to do this for another 50 years, God willing.
Yes.
So, I mean, in the long run, I mean, we're talking 5 years. I'm talking about 20, 30 years, right? I'm talking generations. You want to have uncorrelated, because you can have, really, really great success in the short term. But if you go look at it far out enough, businesses go out.
That's
business, right? And that happens because people are just focused on one segment, one thing, and that's everything. And if that goes in the other direction, it really takes a business down.
Makes sense. So if you had the opportunity to start all over again here, how would you do things differently than you've done in the past?
One of the things that I'm guilty of is I like to overanalyze things. Paralysis by analysis. I would overthink, slow down, try to chase perfection. You can never be perfect at anything, but you try, and doing that really impedes growth. It slows you down. There's been situations where opportunities came up that I probably should have taken, and I lost those because by the time I decided to do something, somebody else had already done it. I recall a little over a year ago, there was a hotel that came up for sale in Saskatoon here. It was a great opportunity. I did all the analysis. I spent so much time. I went through everything. It was a perfect opportunity. And by the time we decided to act on it, somebody else had already purchased it. So what I'm saying is, like, even on designs, like sometimes like I'd like to, spend so much time designing a house that it becomes, slows us down. Where somebody else comes in and they, throw together a design quickly and they're able to build it quickly and it still ultimately sells. That being said, I think you got to do the best you can on making sure your designs are the best and you're optimized. But you could try to avoid slowing things down. Try to keep the ball rolling. Try not overanalyzing. There's a million different ways you can analyze things. A lot of times you can analyze things and it makes sense, and then you could overanalyze it and it stops making sense.
Right.
That makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah.
But you want to make sure that it's within your wheelhouse. You understand the opportunity you're looking at. If it makes sense to you, the fundamentals are there, and everything looks good on the surface, you should act quickly, rather than analyze. Because oftentimes, by the time you decide to do something, somebody else already decides. But at the same time, don't rush into things.
And it's interesting. I'm also guilty of that. I mean, sometimes we overanalyze things and we think too much, and we get into this state where it's hard to make a decision moving forward. A really good book that helped me when overcome some of these decision-making factors is called Blink. I believe that's the name of the book, but I'll send a link to you so you can have a look at it. But it's a really good book that allows you to be able to kind of evaluate the circumstances and to be able to come up with a decision very quickly and a right decision. So, yeah.
The example that I have, it's an example from Warren Buffett, actually. It's a pretty famous one. It's the one where in business, you don't have to swing. It's like baseball, but you don't have to swing. You're not going to strike out. But when you get something in your sweet spot that you can hit, it checks out, make sure you act.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
What I would do differently is I would stress less. I would tell myself that, hey, it's okay. You'll get there.
Right, yeah.
It's not the end of the world. And try to enjoy it a little bit more. But the building a business is really fun at the same time. Like it's an exhilarating ride, but there's ups and downs, and there's stressful moments, and there's happy moments. But there's always, in business, there's rarely a time where there's something that's not going wrong. There's always some sort of crisis, some sort of issue to deal with. But I would tell myself, like, hey, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world, right?
Right.
Take it easy. You'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
We try to overthink things, and it takes a little bit of enjoyment out, I think. But overall, building a business is really fun. What I would do differently, I would try to hire the right people a little bit earlier. I remember in the initial stages when we first, for example, got an office. This would have been 2020, I believe, 2019 or 2020, just before the pandemic, so 2019. I was worried. I'm like, should we take on this cost? Right? It was small thinking, right? And I was stressed. And then we got an office, so we added overhead. And then when we had our first hire, for example, I was stressed. I'm like, oh, gee, we have payroll now. This is a big deal. Maybe we shouldn't do this, right? This is risky. We have to pay people. I would say that small-mindedness in the initial stages, I would not have those thoughts anymore, and I would hire quicker and move quicker. And I would, if I were to do things all over again, I would probably be a little bit less accommodating for changes. Customers make changes all the time. They want to be able to change everything. And in the initial stages, you're very receptive to that. But I think ultimately it does slow your growth down, and it's hard to manage a lot of changes, especially when people are changing things and you have multiple sites, things get missed. I would probably standardize a little quicker, hire quicker, make decisions quicker, and manage expectations a little bit better.
I mean, you certainly have a big vision now, but back then, you were just kind of starting over, and exactly, yes. I mean, so it's hard to have that big vision because your vision depends on your past experience, and you haven't experienced some of the growth aspects of the business yet.
I would say I always had a big vision.
Great.
If you asked me back then where I would be today, I would be very proud of where I am today, and I would probably be a little bit surprised because I didn't think I would be here this early in my career.
Nice.
But I always had big vision. But when you're starting and it's your parents worked their whole lives to save a nest egg, and that's their nest egg. That's what they're going to live off, right? Very, very stressful when you're making big decisions that potentially you're risking, their 20, 30 years of hard work and savings. So that stress, it weighs on you. So that makes you a little bit maybe more risk averse. But if I was to do it all over again, I would, because in the last 7-8 years, Saskatchewan has been fantastic. I think ultimately we've been very lucky as well to be in Saskatchewan. It's been a great time to be here. I mean, Saskatchewan's having unprecedented growth. There was a time where people would be moving away from, and population would go down, and everyone was moving to Alberta. But right now, I think if you look at the overall landscape, Saskatchewan's faring probably better than just about anybody in the country. Right,
yeah. I mean, it's quite interesting. I remember, I came to Saskatoon. It was back in 1998, a long time ago.
Time before me, even.
Yeah, and it was a very different city back then. Certainly, there's been a big evolution in terms of how Saskatoon has grown over the years, and it's a very multicultural, diverse community now. And that is still growing very rapidly. So, it's got a great future in sight, and we'll see how things go and how much of an economic impact it creates.
I'm very bullish on Saskatchewan. Yeah. I love it here. It's a great place. The people here are great.
Yes. Yeah.
The farming community and the construction community, They're really good. They're really, really nice people. They're trusting people. They're hardworking. They're genuine. The other thing about Saskatchewan is we've been, very, very lucky, I would say. We've been blessed. We have lots of resources.
Yes.
And those resources right now are in high demand. So we have a lot of demand for resources. We have a lot of mining happening. There's a lot more that's going to be coming down the pipe. And that's really helped, bolster the economy. And then on top of that, we have really good immigration policies here, which have really helped and helped grow the economy here. And it's going to be a growing economy. Ultimately, what do we need in this? We need an economy that grows. I mean, if you're building homes or you're building rentals, whatever you're building, if it's for sale, rent, doesn't matter. If there's people leaving the province, your community, there's no demand, right? You need the population to grow, and this is a growing economy, growing population.
And I think in the past, Saskatchewan in general has struggled in keeping people within, partly because of the weather, because, sometimes...
I think it's the weather, and it's a smaller city, and there's not much to do here.
That's right.
But then the opportunities were lacking. I think the government at the time didn't really understand capitalism the way they should, and they needed to just incentivize people and really take advantage of our natural resources and grow the economy. People are going to Alberta because they had better politics, I think, really, which allowed them to grow, which made them more attractive. Hopefully we can get somebody like that where we can bring in and
fuel the economy over here. So absolutely. So I think there's a lot of positive things about Saskatchewan in general, and I think overall it's been I believe Saskatoon is like the second fastest growing city right now in Canada, which is
I know it's been up there. It just changes, the ranking changes, but it's always been growing.
Yeah,
it's been one of the faster growing communities.
Yeah. From a population perspective, for sure, and it's a good size, a city of good size. I mean, anyone new that I speak to over here, they say it's a great place to raise a family. It's a
great place to do everything. It's a great place to raise a family. It's a great place to start a business.
Exactly.
Yeah. The thing about Saskatchewan that really is, like in the construction industry, I would say is advantageous. It's very, compared to other provinces, other cities, it's less competitive.
Right.
It's easier to buy land. Prices are more affordable. More availability. If you go to bigger markets, it's very hard to find things, especially the big guys. They eat up all the land, and it's very hard. Here, the city is the one that develops a lot of the land. Smaller builders, they buy from the city primarily because the city has to treat everyone fairly. They have to allocate a certain amount of land for everybody. So for that, it's a big advantage for somebody that wants to start in the business. It's a really good way to get your foot in the door.
Excellent. So, Gary, we've had a wonderful conversation about your past, and if you were to give your younger self, let's say if you were to go back 10 years and you were to give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that be?
I would tell myself that it's going to be okay.
Right.
Don't stress about everything. Enjoy the moment. It's all going to work out eventually. We got caught up in the little day-to-day stresses, and we forget to enjoy. Going back, I would say, everything's an existential crisis. It's the end of the world, when in reality it's not. Enjoy the moment. Growing a business is really fun, and I've really enjoyed it. But the stress does make it a little difficult at times. If I had to tell my younger self, I'd be like, you know what, Gary, it's going to be fine. Enjoy the process. You're very fortunate to be in this position. We're very lucky to be in a country as great as Canada, and we're living the dream, and we're building our businesses, and we're healthy, and we have great family. So we should enjoy the moment and not worry about too much, because as long as you're doing all the right things, for example, you're taking care of the bottom line, you're keeping your costs down as much as you possibly can. I always thought that there's always more I can do. You know what I mean? But when I look back at it, I'm like, I put everything on the line.
Right.
There's really not much more I could have done in those times, right? But I always had that misconception of telling myself, like, you're not doing enough. Do more, do more. There's always more theoretically you could do, but there's only so much you can do. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I would just tell myself, Gary, you're doing good. Just make sure you work the hardest you can and let the rest figure itself out.
Yeah. And what advice would you have for other entrepreneurs who are looking up to you in terms of starting to build a business and trying to grow their...
The thing is, a lot of people, they want to start a business. They don't have the self-confidence to start a business.
Yeah.
they have that victim mentality, like, oh, I can't do this. You're the chosen one, this, that. Nobody's just chosen one. Like, I started from a very humble beginning. A lot of my peers have. Most successful people, if you really look at it, it's a long-term play. They started with humble beginnings, and they build it up. And they took immense stress. They put a lot of pressure on themselves. They worked hard. They made sacrifices. And if you do that, you too could be, successful one day and build a business. However big your dreams are and however ambitious you are, you could do it. But you do have to sacrifice. A lot of people, they want to have the lifestyle. They want to have the business, but they don't want to do the hard work. And they don't want to take the risk. The hard thing is if you look at a home builder, they get paid last, for example. Like literally you pay for all the materials, you pay for the supplies, pay for all the tradespeople, you pay your payroll, you pay all your overhead. And then at the end, if the house sells
At a profit,
you make money. The cash flows are very unpredictable. Possessions get delayed. Houses sometimes sell, sometimes they don't sell. There's so many variables. Most people would not be able to have the stomach to do that. They would not be able to, have the uncertainty with them. But the thing is, if you're going to take risks, it's all calculated risk. Like maybe from the viewer, they think, oh, wow, this guy's taking huge risk. And in many cases, it seems that way. But if somebody is as dedicated and they're thinking things through and they're relentless, they're going to have thought of every scenario that could happen. And they did all the calculations. And they know that it's worth it at the end of the day. I think in business, you got to have some advantages. You got to have, a business where you have some asymmetric risk, where you understand things a little bit better than the next guy, and you're able to leverage off of that. There's a few business, philosophies that I subscribe to, and it's been helpful. And I think you have to have your way of doing things, but generally business doesn't change. You got to have organic revenue growth, and you got to have either organic revenue growth or a way of improving your margins. You got to have a framework. I like Elon Musk's framework. He uses first principles. Right, and rather than reasoning by analogy, most people reason with analogy. For example, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to become successful, but XYZ failed, so therefore I can't become successful.
Right.
Because this guy did this and he failed, right? Whereas, first principles tells you, like, break things down to a fundamental. Like, for example, you take a house, you break it down to the fundamental cost of materials and labor, right? And then you see, okay, well, this is what it costs, and this is what it's worth at the end. And then you realize the amount of money you can make in there, right? I think that's a very useful framework. No, it doesn't matter what type of business you're in, but a lot of people, they get stuck in dogma. Most people want to do things, but then they have examples of people that never got it, made it, right? And then they're like, well, he didn't do it, so I couldn't do it.
Right.
And that's not the right approach. You can't think that way. If you're gonna do it, you gotta figure it out. And in Canada, we have a great economic engine, and it's a very Saskatchewan's very entrepreneurial.
It is,
which is great. Saskatchewan cherishes entrepreneurs. They want, and ultimately, if you have, businesses that are creating value, like, for example, I've built hundreds of houses in Saskatoon. It gives me great comfort knowing there's thousands of people that are living in a house that, I had something to do with it to put the roof on their head. Right? It's very comforting, and that's very useful, and we need people like that. Especially if you're growing a city, if you don't have people that are going to take those risks and build these, and they have to be incentivized.
I want to speak a little bit about the revenue growth. I mean, you mentioned an important point is that when it comes to growing revenues and obviously making sales, I mean, how do your customers find you right now?
Right now, it's mostly through connections we built with agents, referrals, and a bit of signage. I think, people hear sign, they find out who's building this project, they call the office, and then we refer them. That's a part of our business that we can probably improve drastically. However, we were growing really fast. Our focus wasn't on this because sales was not an issue.
Right.
But I think it comes to a point where your business is big enough where you can only manage so much by yourself. And I think we're approaching that right now, where we need to have more of a systematic approach. We got to have more marketing, more advertising. When things slow down, that's when it really makes the difference. When things are hot and things are selling, it's like throwing fish into a barrel.
Right, yeah.
But when the market slows down, you need to have a strong sales approach. You have to have a strong customer base. You got to have a strong reputation. Referrals are everything. The best type of deal that you can do is a referral. That's the best way to sell something because they're already sold before they come to you.
Yeah, I mean, they're warm leads, so they already know about your business and they've been referred by.
Yeah. And I think it's the best way. Like if I'm buying something and I know somebody that I trust that had a good experience with that company, my mind's already at ease. As long as I get a reasonable price, I'm good.
The only challenge is that referrals are tough to scale. Yeah. It's hard to get a lot of referrals on a consistent basis, right?
Mm-hmm. Our approach to sales has been this. There has to be some sort of advantage to buying with you. And for us, it's been cost advantage is the biggest. And if you have a cost advantage, you're able to sell it maybe slightly lower. I would say this is more true when there's limited number of buyers, the economy is not that great. It's more of a buyer's market than it is a seller's. It really holds true then. If you have a cost advantage and you're able to build something for less than what your peers are able to build it for, then you could theoretically sell it for a little bit less and still make possibly the same or more margin still. And in home building, the whole thing is if you're able to build and turn it over quickly, return on investment is a function of time. If you're able to shrink the time or increase the margin over time, that's going to be, determining what your returns are going to be. So to make outsized returns, if you're able to build it for less and you're able to build it, let's say, quicker than your competitors, but you're able to sell it at a slight discount so that your product moves first and it's not sitting. We've been very fortunate. I would say largely true. There are a few, outliers, but since I've been involved in the business and it's been growing, we've had almost hardly ever a house that wasn't sold before it was done. Like I can't really recall many houses that we had done, move-in ready, cleaning done, everything done, like it's possession ready, and it wasn't sold already. And that's huge. Imagine if you build a house, let's just say all things equal, you build a house in 6 months, I build a house in 6 months. If I can sell my house the moment I'm done and I get paid, and I can start building the next house, in a year I can build it twice. But if you build it in 6 months and your house takes 2-3 months to sell, possession takes another 30-40 days, your return is based on 9 months. Mine is based on 6 months. If you're able to do it in 6 months and you're doing it in 9 months and you make the same return, and it's not true, your return's going to be actually less because you're going to have carrying costs. Somebody's paying property taxes, somebody's paying utilities. If you have a mortgage on it, you're paying the interest. So if we just even ignore that for a moment, just the time horizon, my returns are 50% higher than yours.
Of course.
And in the long run, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. So if you're able to compound at a higher rate, you'll be more successful. And it's crazy. I do that math all the time. If you can, for example, grow something at 12%, you double your money in 6 months.
Right.
If you're able to grow something at, say, 18%, you're able, which is great. It doesn't sound like a huge difference, right? It's like, okay, well, 12 is really good, 18 is really good. They're good returns, but 18 is a lot better. But it's not, like to the average person, it's going to be, okay, well, it's 50% better. It's not 50%. It's way better.
Right.
Because you're able to double your money in 4 years. So if you do the math, 2 doubles in 12. If you're doing 12%, you quadruple your money in 12 years. Whereas if your return is 18%, you make your money eightfold. So
Interesting.
in 12 years, you'd be worth twice as much, or that money would be worth twice as much.
Right.
So what I'm saying is the compounding interest that's the magic, especially if you're building, long-term investments and you're looking long-term. You want to have small savings. If you're able to maybe increase your margin by 1 or 2% and you're able to do it for a sustained amount of time and let compounding do its thing, you'll be light years ahead.
Right. Interesting. I mean, obviously, with your accounting background, putting numbers in place, I can see that you put a lot of thought into this.
But one of the things that we were able to do is I would say we had more vertical integration than most builders, or I would say actually any builder that's built as many houses as we have. We've kind of shifted a little bit. I mean, when you grow, you can't do everything yourself.
Of course.
So as you grow, things do change. But, there was a time where we did every foundation ourselves. We dug it ourselves. We subbed out the formwork. We bought the concrete. We dropped off the rebar. We ordered the rocks. We backfilled it ourselves. We hired the dam proofing separately. Whereas you just go to a foundation company and they do it all for you. But they charge maybe, say, 17, 18% margin, right? As they should. That's their business. If you're able to bring more things in-house in the earlier stages where you have time, and that's not your limiting resource, then you should do that, right? Even till now, we order our own drywall, we hire the board guys, we hire the tapers, we hire the texture guy. These are a lot of things that a lot of our competitors sub out to one guy, and they do it all because it saves them time and effort, which is true. Like, I mean, if you're trying to do a lot of houses, there's only so many things you can do.
Of course.
But in the early stages, your limiting resource it's money. It's not time. You do have time, you could do more, but your limiting resource is money.
Right.
And if your limiting resource is money, then try to do more things yourself. Because if you could save money in this spot and you could save money on that spot and you can sell your house at a maybe slightly better price, your house will move a little quicker, and then over time you'll make more money than your competitors, which will let you, have a competitive advantage against them. You want to build a moat around your business. Yeah. And I would say for the larger companies, what you could do is you could just buy land in swaths. And that's kind of what we're doing now. We're not as large as some of our competitors, but we've really moved into that. We've done, I would say, half a dozen blocks now. Full blocks of houses. You can buy a full block of houses and you can build essentially the same house. In our case, we just changed the elevation. But you could put a few different models, but really if you want to streamline, just build, it's like Ford. They build the same car on a production line. If you can start buying blocks of land and you're building the same house just down the street and then you're doing it again and again, it really speeds things up.
Interesting.
So, I mean, it depends on the phase of business, but you do want to take advantage of what you have. If you're a smaller business and you're, having a hard time growing, try to do things yourself. Try to maybe, vertically integrate if you can, break down tasks, try to save money where you can. And the other thing is you really got to negotiate.
Yes.
Like I would say, I had a reputation. I would say it's still largely true, but it was more prevalent, back when we were a little bit smaller, is everyone would be like Gary Nichols and Dimes. He negotiates too much. He's very, and ultimately, if you can negotiate and just improve your margin a couple points, which, to the average person, they're just like, why are you being so stingy? A couple points on, let's say, $10, $20, $30 million revenue, it's a big deal.
Of course.
And then if you look at that and you compound it out, it becomes a massive deal. You really want to be careful and negotiate where you can, but you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. Right. Sometimes you over-negotiate a deal to the point where you lose it. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But negotiation is huge. A lot of guys, they feel uncomfortable. A lot of people won't negotiate with somebody and they're like, oh, I don't know, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? But you really got to negotiate. Negotiation is probably one of the main things that you can do as a business owner is to just keep your costs down, negotiate. And you got to be in the market. You got to know what's going on, and find out. Like, you can't really negotiate if you don't really know the full picture. You need to know who else can do this job. If you're not doing this job for this much, I can go to this guy, and you know what I mean? But if you're not out there and you're not networking and you don't know, it's hard to negotiate. You need to really put yourself out there, get to know people, network. And just make sure you're paying the best price you can, right? I mean, ultimately, the work has to get done, but try to get it done at the best price without sacrificing quality.
Of course. Well, Gary, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and learning more about your background. Where can people find out more about yourself and get in touch with you?
Our website's www.oxfordhomes.ca. Our office number is 306-931-3333. You can reach out there or on Instagram. We have an Instagram account. But
Great website, by the way. So
it's designed by you, so of course.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, and I certainly look forward to having your episode on the show here. And we'll definitely include those links in the podcast so people can find you. And certainly wish you the best in your business and making sure that you achieve your vision. So
thank you, Manip. Thank you for having me.